Friends, in my previous video with regard to group dynamics, I was talking about the various properties of groups, where we have talked about uh, the various properties an effective group should have. So where we have talked about roles, where we have talked about norms. Within norms, we have talked about deviant behavior. Now, I'll continue from there. So today, I will talk about the other remaining, quality properties of the groups with regard to status, cohesiveness, and size, which has a very important impact on overall group performance. So let's start with the status. So what is status? Status is actually a socially defined position, which or a rank given to the group or a group member by others, which differentiate that particular group or a member from other groups or other member in the organization. So it is an important factor in understanding the behavior of that particular group member who or a particular group who gets a important status in that particular organization. Like for example, uh, any group who's a revenue earner to the organization, who is a profit center, obviously enjoys the high status in that particular organization, whereas the cost centers are always deprived of resources, as well as prone to various criticism from the top management. So that is so that has a lot of significant impact on the behavior of the member who enjoys the high status in a particular group, and it is very significant motivator also to the members who enjoy the high status or who don't enjoy the high status. So it may be a demotivating factor to them. Now, what's the status characteristics theory says? So it says the status has been derived from three sources. First is the position which that particular person holds in that organization. So which provides a person an authority to exercise power over other and enjoy the status attached to that particular position. Then second is ability to contribute to the goals. Like I said, profit center always enjoy high status. So because they bring money to the organization, so whole economy is driven by them. So ability to contribute to the group goals will give that particular person or that particular group a high status. Any person who is bringing high revenue to the organization obviously enjoy the high status and other perks attached to it. Then comes the personal characteristics of the person, where the person himself or herself has the charisma, which makes him different from other people in the organization. So which provides the person a high status in the organization. Now, what is the impact of status on the behavior? So we talked about conformity, with regard to deviant behavior or norms. So basically, high status people, they have been, they actually they are less restrained by the group norms, okay, or pressure to conform. Like if suppose coming on time is a norm in a particular group, but any person who enjoys the high status, or any group who enjoys the high status in the organization, if the person from that group or that person comes late, then nobody will question him, okay. So that is something, they are not liable to kind of conformity to the norms of the groups. or the organization they're working in. So there are certain relaxation for them. Okay, so some level of deviance is allowed to high status people or members, so long as it does not affect the overall performance of the group or the organization. Okay, so that was with regard to conformity to the norms. Now on group interaction, high status members are more assertive. They don't commit anything. They are generally very assertive in whatever communication they do with their group members or other employee in the organization. Large status kind of differences limit diversity of ideas. I have talked about it, in terms of in terms of role people have, when we were talking about other group properties. So if somebody has a high important role in the organization, okay, or the high status in the organization, when he is heading a particular group, then obviously it kind of restrict the diversity of ideas and the creativity of that particular group if that high status member is heading it, because other people may refrain from speaking in front of him. So that is an impact on the group interaction of the high status group or a person who is heading the group. Now on equity, if status is perceived to be inequitable, it will result in various forms of corrective behaviors. So it has been observed that people who are high in status, they kind of keep correcting others' behavior, okay, because they are very much aware of the facts that there's some kind of a inequity exists between them and others, okay, and then they want to exercise that power. So that kind of they indulge into a corrective behaviors and they try to correct other people very often. Now another property which I will talk about is group size. That's the fourth property we are going to discuss of a group performance, for the effective group performance. So what should be the appropriate size of a group which can affect the behavior of the people? Okay, so there are different views on this, okay, with regard to group performance. Some if you 12 or more people has been considered as a large group, okay, 7 or fewer people has been considered as a small group, okay, but there are different attributes which are attached to it when you should have particular, whether you should have a small group or whether you should have a large group. You need to use certain attributes to decide what is important to you. Like for example, with regard to speed, if you want to get the work done quickly, then obviously small groups are better, okay. When you want individual performance to be accounted or individual performance to be noted, or individual people need to take the responsibility, obviously small group is more effective, okay. But when you want effective problem solving, so more the merrier. So in that situation you need to have a large group. When you want a diverse ideas, creative ideas or different ideas from the people from the different background, obviously large group will be more effective, okay. When you want more of a fact findings with regard to goals, then obviously the more information you have, so more you will be able to collect the data, more you will be able to make your decision logically and rationally. So obviously large group are better there. When you are looking at overall performance, then it is better to have a small groups. So this is the criteria you need to follow as a manager. So what are the different things you are looking for? When speed is important, small group. When individual performance is important, then small group. When ideas and the problem solving and fact finding is there, you need to have a large group. and when you're focusing on overall performance, so you need to create a small groups. Now, issues with the group size is, okay, there's a term called social loafing. What exactly social loafing is? So when actually group size increases, um, individual working in those large groups, uh, their efforts start decreasing. Okay, so basically, it's kind of a tug and tug and war game, uh, where you don't know how much effort and each individual is putting in when they are pulling up the ropes. Okay, so basically, collectively when you are working in a large group, then individuals have a tendency to expend less effort because they know the other people are there, they will take care of it. So that's the another, this is the important thing which as a manager you need to keep it in mind. And because this happen when you are working in a large group, so members have that sense that whether they should work more or less, it's not going to impact because they are going to get a group goals or group rewards. So why to put an extra effort? So that's the tendency individuals have. Okay, so basically it is that social loafing is actually caused by either equity concerns or diffusion of responsibility. There are free riders in the group who enjoy the advantage of the overall group performance. So you need to be careful as a manager to curb social loafing. To prevent social loafing, you need to set group goals, also increase intergroup competition. Okay, use peer evaluation within the group, distribute group rewards based on individual efforts. So these are the different measures you need to take to prevent any kind of a social loafing in the group. Now from here I'll move on to the next property, number 5, cohesiveness. What exactly cohesiveness is? So cohesiveness is actually the degree to which group members are attracted towards each other or bond with each other, or they are motivated to stay together. That's called cohesiveness. Like your friendship groups, where you glue with each other and you bond with each other so well that you want to stay with each other and you're motivated to work together in that particular group. So basically, managerial implication of cohesiveness is, if you want to increase the cohesiveness in your group, so what you need to do is you need to make the smaller groups, okay, so where each member can have an opportunity to interact with each other. So that will help them knowing each other and they will bond together better. Encourage agreement with the group goals. Okay, when each member had a agreement with the goal and each member has a similar goal, they will glue with each other more than the people if there are differences about the goals. Okay, increase time member spend together. So the more you time you spend with each other, the more you will bond with each other better. Okay, then so that's why most organization, during the orientation program, they send the group member to off-site and for some adventure sports. So and they share certain kind of a difficulty, so which they face together. So they start bonding together. Okay, so that is something you need to do. Increase group status and admission difficulty. That is very important. When people get a membership to a particular group, they don't value it so easily. So you need to make the admission criteria difficult, so that when people will get the entry into group, they will value it, they will stick to it, because they know how much hard work they have got the membership. Then that's why many good organizations, they have a very stringent criteria for selections. That is what they use for, because people will value it when they will pass through a stringent selection criteria. Then stimulate competition with the other groups. Okay, so when you are competing with other groups, then people tend to bond together when in their groups. so when you will try to facilitate different competition between the different groups, so you need that will kind of bond a particular group members more than the if there's no competition. In that situation there won't be any much kind of a bonding. Then comes give rewards to the other group, not to individuals. Okay, so that is something you need to look at, but of course within that you need to keep into account the individual performance of the group members also. You need to do a peer review also, so you need to actually give rewards to the group. When there is a competition between the groups, then obviously it will help. One group will try to achieve more reward for their group, and they will bond better. Then sometimes like I've already given the example, you need to isolate the group. Sometimes you need to send them off site where they will face certain difficulties, so they will bond together. So isolation is another method you can use to enhance the cohesiveness in a particular group. Now so there is another phenomena which I want to discuss with regard to group decision making. Now we talked about group performance, so these are the 5 different characteristics we talked about. Now first you discuss what group is and how you can enhance the group performance by having all this. You need to have a clear role, you need to have a good norms in the organization, in the groups. Then you need to create a high status, high admission difficulty criteria. Okay, you need to define the role of the people in the groups. So and then you need to have kind of enhance the cohesiveness of the group members. So these are the various characteristics you use. Now why you do it? So that group can make effective decisions, okay, when they are working together. Okay, so so basically so there are few things you need to keep it in mind. There's a phenomena called group thing, which generally happens when you are making decision in the group. Okay, what exactly group think is? So it is just opposite to its name. It's not exactly the group think. It is actually when it's a situation where group pressures for conformity deters the group from actually critically appraising the unusual, minority or unpopular view. Okay, and it's kind of hinders the performance of the group. Like also group member when under the pressure of conformity, what they do, they forget the moral implication of their idea. Okay, so so basically within the group thing, group shift also happen. There's a very beautiful movie to demonstrate this particular phenomena called Ek Ruka Hua Faisla, or 12 Angry Men in English. So these are the 2 movies which demonstrate these 2 phenomena very effectively. So where 12 members have been asked to there's a jury which has been asked to decide about the fate of the death and the life of a particular accused, a minor boy who has been accused of his father's murder. So so this particular movie demonstrates this group think phenomena very categorically. So I will recommend you to, at your pace, you can watch this movie. It's available on YouTube. Or 12 Angry Men, if you can find it, that also is available on various portals. So try to watch this movie, which will demonstrate how under the pressure of the group, 11 member at the beginning out of 12, they sentenced the boy guilty. Okay, without even rationally or logically discussing the various facts related to the case. Okay, so that is a group thing. Under the pressure of other group member, people forget the moral implication of their decision and they end up making the wrong decision. Okay, so basically group think affects the effective group decision making. So within the group thing, there is another phenomena called group shift. So when discussing a given set of alternatives and arriving at a solution, group members tend to exaggerate the initial position that they hold. So this caused a shift to more conservative or more risky behavior. So people try to move towards the minority views where, you know, where they think that they, it may be risky, but they want to see the other side of the coin, where they want to explore the other alternatives, okay, which may lead to a better decision making in the group. So that's called a group shift, when a group tries to find a solution in the urge to find a solution, move towards a minority views, okay, or unpopular view or a risky view. So they try to take that position and try to build on that by logically and rationally pursuing the different facts related to that particular decision need to be made. So this is something you need to keep it in mind as a manager. Groupthink always happen in large groups, okay, and so what you need to do, you need to reduce the size of the group to 10 or less to avoid groupthink. You need to encourage group leaders to be impartial, okay, and leader need to inculcate a habit of using brainstorming or nominal group techniques, which we will discuss further in this particular topic, to actually avoid groupthink and making other people to participate while discussing, okay, and freely where they can speak their minds. Then comes, you need to appoint a devil's advocate who will always take a contrary position, who will always go against the popular view and try to, think it from the other perspective. Okay, use exercises on diversity. You need to promote diversity in the group so that you can get a variety of view to make a decision. Okay, so that is something you need to look at. Now I will talk about the various groups decision techniques you can use to make an effective decision. Okay, so basically, to avoid groupthink, avoid conformity. So brainstorming is one of the techniques which you can use. What exactly brainstorming is? Brainstorming is an idea generating process, okay, designed to overcome the pressure of conformity, where each member have to compulsorily contribute something, any wild idea, anything, without any criticism. The ideas will be taken and later on will be open to the discussion or for improvement. Okay, so that is called a brainstorming techniques, where compulsorily each member in the group has to contribute a different idea. Then comes the nominal group techniques. Okay, it is similar to brainstorming, but works by restricting discussion during the decision making process. Members are physically present but operate independently. They have to write down their ideas, they have to put it in a box, then one by one each idea has been taken and open for the discussion for the further improving the ideas, okay, or eliminating unwanted ideas from there. So that is something. So it's similar to brainstorming, but in this case, all the members are sitting in the group so that they are not prone to criticism. They will independently write down on a chit. They will put it in a box, and then one by one each idea has been taken up, okay, without any criticism or negative kind of a without any negative criticism. You can take one by one. No idea has been considered unimportant. Every idea has been discussed and then seen which particular idea can fit better in that particular situation on which you are gathered to make a decision. Now electronic meetings, which is a contemporary technique which has been used by using computers to hold large numbers of meetings of up to 50 people in different geographical locations. So that is something can be used by large corporations or MNC which has presence in different locations. Now you can use various effectiveness criteria we have discussed with regard to size of the group. So this technique also you can use by looking at various effectiveness criteria. When you are looking at number and the quality of ideas, then electronic meetings has been considered very good, okay, because more people can gather. Like I said, more than 50 people in one go electronically can online meet, and they can discuss various ideas. Then you know uh, when you want to reduce use social pressure to take a particular decision, then obviously interaction, face to face kind of a decision making is better. So you can call people for face to face discussion. Okay, when you want to reduce the money cost, obviously electronic meetings are again better. Okay, sorry, this brainstorming is better, and electronic meetings are high on cost in terms of because we need to use a lot of infrastructure to set up computers at every location, and whereas in brainstorming or nominal techniques, you can call the people for a meeting in a particular room and you can discuss face to face. Okay, then if speed is important, then all the different methods can be used, and they have moderate um, effectiveness things. Then commitment to the solution. When face to face interaction is there, then it is high. Electronically it's moderate. Okay, and brainstorming, there's no clear research on it, but of course it's towards moderate kind of a effectiveness. Then obviously, so when commitment is required, then face to face is always better. Then development of group cohesiveness. Then obviously interacting or face to face interaction techniques like brainstorming or nominal have high to moderate kind of effectiveness criteria. Obviously the electronic meeting have a less effectiveness with regard to if you want to create a cohesiveness in the group. Now, what are the differences between groups and teams? Okay, so basically groups are interact primarily to share information and to make decision, which helps the other members in that particular group to make decision easily. So basically it's work groups are a kind of a platform where information sharing is happens. Okay, and so that each member in that particular can perform with his or her area of responsibility with the information received from the work group. Okay, so but basically there's no joint effort in the group. On the other hand, work teams generate positive synergy through coordinated efforts. Okay, and the individual efforts result in the performance that is greater than the sum of individual inputs. So basically you work, you coordinate with each other with the other members in the group, and who has a similar goal, and you create a particular synergy in the group to achieve the different groups. So that is the difference between a work group and work teams. So work groups are basically a platform where you share the information with the group members, but individual the employees work independently. There is no coordination amongst the employees. Okay, so there are various comparing point here between work groups and work teams. So so goal of the work group is to share information, whereas the goal of work team is to have a collective performance. On the other hand, synergy in the work group is very neutral or sometimes negative. Okay, people may not want to share the information, they want to retain the information, so it is little synergy is negative. Whereas in work team, synergy is positive because everybody is working, everybody is aware that group performance will lead to group rewards, group goals achievement, so synergy is positive. Whereas in work group, people work individually, whereas accountability of the group member is individual, whereas in work teams accountability is both individual as well as collective. Okay, in skill required in work group is more random and very different. People share different area information with regard to the specialization in their own areas, whereas when you're working in a particular team, so each member's skill complement each other's skills, so it's more of a complement. So these are the various comparison between work group and the work teams. Now, how many types of teams are there? Basically, broadly, 3-4 types of teams have been categorized. I'll share one by one. Uh, first is in the row is problem solving team, where group of 5 to 12 employees from same department who meets for a few hours each week to discuss ways to improving the quality of and efficiency of the work environment. So it's called a problem solving. It's like your office, teams where meetings happens to discuss various issues. The department you're working in, different members of your department, they will work together and they will try to discuss the various issues and try to find solution to it. Then comes self-managed team. Okay, it is actually a group of 10 to 15 people who takes on the responsibility of their former supervisors. Okay, so it can be from different departments. They come together. Basically, they come together for doing planning, strategizing, work scheduling, deploying the resources. So that is what they do in the self-managed team. So they try to, take the role of their previous supervisor and try to take things into control. Then comes cross-functional teams. It's in this kind of teams, employees from the same hierarchical level, like it's like a lateral, teams where, like for example, manager, HR manager, operations manager, marketing. Okay, so cross-functional, they come together, to accomplish a particular task. Okay, these kind of teams are very common, like task forces, committees in any organizations. So this is called a cross-functional team where members from the different functions, they will come together and they discuss whatever the different issues their departments are facing and how they can well coordinate with each others. Okay, so these are called cross-functional teams. Then comes which are contemporary one is, and the last one in the row is virtual teams, where teams that use technology, computer technology, to tie together physically dispersed member in order to achieve the common goals. So but it is characterized by limited socialization. People are virtually connected. Okay, so there's hardly any kind of a cohesiveness in those groups. The ability to overcome time and space constraint is the reason these kind of teams are created. Like right now we are virtually interacting because there are time and space constraints, or the situational constraints are there. So that is something is used. Then to be effective, you need to create a better trust among the group members. Okay, you need to have a close monitoring what each member in different location they are doing. Okay, and taking updates from them, and you need to publicize it. You need to make market it within promote it within your group that you want to promote more virtual teams, because it's kind of a save times and space for the members. So that's all for this topic now. Okay, I hope I have been able to cover everything which is given in this particular unit. Still, if you have any doubts or any kind of questions, you feel free to write to me via email or any other medium you like to. So thank you.